These are the lecture notes for Chapter 22 on fungi. There are only 3 sections. In section 22.1, we will discuss the characteristics of fungi. 22.2 will be the different groups of fungi, and 22.3, fungi are in symbiotic relationships with other organisms, and we will discuss those relationships. The fungi are classified in supergroup Opisthokonta. You may remember that the supergroup Opisthokonta includes the animals, the fungi, and the choanoflagellates, which are protozoans from the kingdom Protista. Fungi are heterotrophic, meaning they consume their food, and they are saprotrophs, meaning that they are decomposers. They decompose dead organic material. The way that fungi obtain their food and their nutrients is they release digestive enzymes into their environment. And those enzymes break down their food, the organic nutrients from dead leaves and dead plant and animal material. And then they absorb the nutrients that have been digested, basically. They absorb the nutrient molecules. So where humans and animals are heterotrophic by ingestion, we ingest our food, fungi absorb their food from the environment. And here we see that evolutionary evidence tells us that most likely the common ancestor of fungi and animals was a flagellated unicellular protist, similar to a choanoflagellate. As far as the structure of fungi, the body of the fungus is called a thallus, and mostly the body is composed of mycelium, which is multicellular. Basically, the mycelium is a collection of hyphae, and hyphae are little thread-like structures. So the collection of hyphae is called the mycelium. Now, most fungi are multicellular, but the yeast are unicellular. So they wouldn't have hyphae and they wouldn't have mycelium. The hyphae, the thread-like structures that form the body of a fungus, they give the fungus a large surface area so that it will maximize the absorption of nutrients. Some fungi have walls in their hyphae called septa, and we call them septate, and then others don't. And the cell walls of fungi are composed of chitin, the same material that composes the exoskeletons of insects. So we've learned that the cell walls of plants are composed of cellulose. The cell walls of bacteria are composed of peptidoglycan, but fungi have chitin in their cell walls. And then where we've learned that plants store, or you have learned it in the past anyway, plants store food as starch. In animals and fungi, excess glucose or excess food or excess glucose is stored as glycogen. So glycogen sometimes is called animal starch, but it's also found in fungi. And here you see an image of some strawberries that have been infected with fungi, and you can see the fuzzy white hyphae and an illustration of the hyphae in the second picture. And here's a picture of septate hyphae that have the cross walls or septa, and then aseptate, which don't have those septa. Fungi can reproduce by sexual and asexual reproduction. But the basic sexual reproduction stages look like this. You have haploid hyphae, as you can see here on the left, haploid hyphae, whose and then you have the fusion of, okay, so you start out with haploid hyphae, and what's not shown in the picture is there's going to be another one because you have to have two parents. So let's say the picture that you see here on the left is parent number 1, and we don't call them mother and father because they're not divided into genders. But this hyphae has a haploid nucleus, and then you would have another hyphae that has a haploid nucleus, and those nuclei would come together. And we call those dikaryotic when they contain two nuclei. When those nuclei fuse, of course, they're going to be called diploid. And then the diploid hyphae will undergo meiosis and produce the haploid hyphae. The word dikaryotic, make sure you understand that, because this is a new word as far as when we talk about reproduction and meiosis. Dikaryotic just means that the two haploid nuclei are now together in one hyphae, and they're paired up. So that's what we call dikaryotic. When they fuse, they're called diploid, but until the nuclei fuse, when they're just side by side inside one hyphae, we call them dikaryotic. So during sexual reproduction, hyphae from two different mating types fuse. We just call one of the mating types plus and the other one minus instead of male and female. But the hyphae that contain paired haploid nuclei are dikaryotic. The fusion of those nuclei, which is called nuclear fusion, produces a diploid nucleus, which produces haploid spores by meiosis. And then those spores germinate or grow into haploid hyphae. Terrestrial fungi, of course, are fungi that are found on the land. We do have aquatic fungi, but most of our fungi, modern fungi, are terrestrial. So for terrestrial fungi, asexual reproduction involves the production of wind-blown spores. A large mushroom can produce billions of spores. When a spore lands on an appropriate food source like strawberries, it germinates and grows. Unicellular yeast reproduce asexually by a process called budding. And I'll show you a picture of that. I think I will. Well, when we get to the yeast, there is a picture somewhere in here. All right, now we're on section 22.2, and we're looking at table 22.1, features of the fungi phyla. Now, the kingdom Protista, those organisms were grouped into supergroups, but now from this point forward, the fungi, the plants, and the animals are going to be grouped into phyla. The kingdom is called fungi, and the phylum, there are 6. The Blastocladiomycota, the Zygomycota, Neocallimastigiomycota, Chytridiomycota, Glomeromycota, Ascomycota, Basidiomycota. And that's a typo down here. There's not supposed to be a space there. Mainly the ones that I teach in the in-person classes in our labs are the Zygomycota, which includes your black bread mold, the Chytridiomycota, which includes the aquatic fungi, Glomeromycota, which form mycorrhizae with plant roots, the Ascomycota, and the Basidiomycota, which are the 2 largest phyla. But I don't cover the Blastocladiomycota or the Neocallimastigiomycota. I don't really cover those as much. But this is a great table because it gives you the primary characteristics of each phylum. the blastocladiomycota. And notice that all of them end with mycota, which you would see just means fungus, or it comes from mycelium. Comes from the word mycelium. Now, the blastocladiomycota contains zoospores and can exhibit an alternation of generations life cycle similar to plants. They are not very common. The zygomycota only has one species that we really learn about, and that is the species called they produce black bread mold, but the species is called Rhizopus, and they contain hyphae without septa. Their sexual spores are called zygospores, and they're most commonly associated with the species that produce black bread mold. So we really just have one species of zygomycota that we need to learn. As you're studying the different fungal phyla, what I want you to focus on is what is the name of their sexual spores and what is the name of their asexual spores. The sexual spores will always be easy because, for example, zygomycota, their sexual spores are zygospores. All right, then we have ascomycota. Their sexual spores will be ascospores. Basidiomycota, sexual spores will be basidiospores. Down here you can see. All right, so coming back to our third phylum, the Neocalymastigiomycota, have no mitochondria. They use anaerobic metabolism to grow in the guts of herbivores. They help herbivores to break down plant material like grass. The Chytridiomycota, or the chytrids as they're called, they are aquatic, they're single-celled, they contain zoospores, and they can be parasites of animals. There is one that is wiping out, almost decimating amphibian populations, particularly frogs, all over the world, because they infect the skin of the frog, and the problem with that is frogs do have lungs to breathe with, but their lungs are very small. So they use their skin to supplement their breathing. So basically the Chytridiomycota are infecting the frogs and they're suffocating them slowly over time. Then the Glomeromycota, they're primarily known for one thing, and that is forming mycorrhizae, which is an association between the Glomeromycota and plant roots that helps increase the surface area for absorption. So the plant can absorb more water and minerals from the soil. The Ascomycota is a huge phylum, so I won't even say anything about them because we will cover the Ascomycota in detail. The Basidiomycota includes the mushrooms, the puffballs, and this is supposed to say shelf. I don't know why it says leaf mushrooms, but it's supposed to say shelf. I see a lot of like typos in here. I'm going to fix that. I'm sorry about that, but I didn't want to stop recording. They're not terrible typos, but I see some. So I will correct that in a little bit. Now, Microsporidia are not really fungi. They are parasitic fungal relatives. They are single-celled, obligate intracellular animal parasites. So remember that viruses, even though they're not living things, are obligate intracellular parasites. So that means they must have an animal host and they must live inside the cells of that animal. The example given here is called E. cuniculi, and other microsporidia cause diseases in immunocompromised patients. So you may have seen fungal infections, in pictures of fungal infections with people who have active AIDS. Excuse me. A zoospore is an asexual spore with a flagellum. That's the prefix zoo, and that's how you say it. You don't say zoospore, you say zoospore. That just means animal, so they have a flagellum for movement. There are 3 fungal phyla that have zoospores. They are the 3 that are the rarest, and they are Blastocladiomycota, Neocallimastgiomycota, and Chytridiomycota. This is slide number 18, and we will start with this slide in the next recording.